Hey everybody, it's Safi and Marco Dish Out on Movies, the only movie review show on YouTube to review movies in terms of food. It's just Marco here for a very special video. So, I've done lots of pitch videos for the Goosebumps stories that I would want to do. I think, let's see, what have I done? I've done pitches for that was it Chicken Chicken, the book? I think I did like 2 pitches for that, if I were to make that. I've done a video where I've pitched a sequel to Cuckoo Clock of Doom. I did a video where I pitched a Phantom of the Auditorium reboot. And I think that's about it. I think so. I'm not really too sure. But I've had tons of ideas for the Goosebumps universe because, honestly, if I had millions of dollars right now, one of the first things that I would do is buy the Goosebumps rights and make all these Goosebumps projects become real. Because I'm very passionate about the Goosebumps brand, and I'm very certain that if I were able to do these projects, that they would be very, very successful. Because I really feel like, for Goosebumps in general, there's this huge demographic of people who grew up reading the books, and now they're all adults. And I think that those people would really like some good Goosebumps movies and shows. I mean, you look at the Goosebumps stuff that comes out, and the majority of people who are interested in it are adults. They're not even children. Like, it's pretty funny. It's pretty interesting because a lot of the times it's the other way around. And, the adults are interested in something at first, and then as the brand gets older and older, the kids are more interested in it. But I think it's the other way around for Goosebumps. And I think in order to really have a successful Goosebumps brand, you would be much better at catering to the adult demographic as well as the children demographic. And so the way that I would do that is I would make a TV series where it would be for kids and adults. It would be like the 90s show, and you would have adaptations of the books, but then I would also have movies in the Goosebumps universe that are the more adult versions of the stories. And so the way that I would justify that is, let's say I wanted to make a Cuckoo Clock of Doom adaptation for the TV show. Well, that would be a new thing. And then for the movie, that would be a sequel to the 90s show, and it would be a majority adult thing, primarily an adult movie, an adult story, because it's targeted towards the kids who watch that show, and now they're grown-ups, and they would like to watch a continuation to find out what happens. I mean, honestly, who watches that episode and doesn't go, what happened? Did he ever save his sister? Did he ever go back? And I was like, yeah, in my story, he damn sure does. Or, no, actually, he doesn't. Something else happens that's very interesting and very unexpected. It's like A Christmas Carol meets Goosebumps. It's really, really good. There's a great twist at the end, too. And so that's what I would do. So one of the first things that I would do for the movies, which would be Goosebumps Adult, or I would call it something else. I wouldn't call it Goosebumps Adult, but it would be primarily adult movies. So R-rated movies, all the way around. The first thing I would do is do a Slappy Trilogy. That would be a great way to get people interested, because obviously when people think about Goosebumps, for some reason, all they think about is Slappy. I don't know what it is. They've been brainwashed by R.L. Stine and by Scholastic into only thinking about Slappy, even though when I think of Goosebumps, I think about Curly, I think about Monster Blood, and I think about the Haunted Mask. Those are the top 3 things that I think about when I think of Goosebumps. Slappy is not one of the top things that I think about. But I came up with 3 pitches for 3 movies. You have the first, second, and third, and the first one I actually wrote an entire outline. And I'm debating whether or not to read the whole thing because I am still sick, unfortunately. Which sucks because I've been sick this whole month now because of somebody else and not even because of me. And but I guess I have to read the whole thing, even though it will be major spoilers. So the first movie in this trilogy would be called He's a Jolly Good Dummy. It would be black and white all the way until the ending. And at the end, what I would do is I would have Slappy's eyes turn green, and then the rest of the screen turns into color. And then that picture is turned into a Goosebumps cover. And then it's end. It's the end. And you see the end credits. And other stuff happens. So this movie would be about a homeless kid named Emilio. And now I'm just going to go ahead and read this. And I'll be the first one to say this is not anywhere near perfect. I rushed through this because I wanted to give you guys a full pitch. It is about 16 pages, and a lot of the stuff in it I would change. For instance, I'm not very good at one-liners. I'm not very good at quips. So a lot of the one-liners that Slappy says, I would change those. I would want someone else to help with that, because I'll be the first one to admit that I'm not very good at coming up with those. I don't really think like that. I don't really like one-liners too much, but I had to because it is Slappy. And I will say that this series would not just have Slappy. It will have a lot of other dummies too, which you will find out in the sequels when I get to those. So here we go. A homeless boy named Emilio and his family are struggling to survive around the holiday season in New Jersey. They have to constantly keep moving, like all the Goosebumps protagonists. Soon they camp out in front of a toy store. Emilio is jealous he can't get any toys for Christmas. He finds Slappy the dummy in a dumpster behind the toy store, and his parents let him keep it as a present. He finds the card and says the magic words. Slappy starts causing mischief, such as making it look like Emilio stole food his parents were rationing, and also putting their belongings out on the busy street so they might get run over when people try to retrieve them. One night, they are sleeping when all of a sudden a long-haired man takes a girl to the back alley. Emilio overhears a woman scream and then awakens his parents. Before they can do anything, the long-haired man comes back. He's got blood all over himself. He sees the family, and he kills the parents for the fun of it with a hammer. Emilio manages to escape and runs away. The killer then picks up Slappy and takes him for himself. This is when we see the long-haired man as Charles Lee Ray, a.k.a. Chucky, before he became Chucky. So, boom. Already, opening scene, you got a Chucky-Slappy crossover. And I would like to also say, the whole idea of the homeless people getting killed with a hammer, that's actually something that happens. It's something that happened in India. There was this serial killer who would go around killing homeless people with a hammer. And I thought that is really scary, so I wanted to include that and make it so that Charles Lee Ray kills the parents of the main character. That's pretty horrifying. And pretty cool that he's like the first bad guy in the movie, basically. I mean, it's not even Slappy. Slappy pull some pranks, and then here comes in Chucky, and he fucks shit up. So he takes Chucky back to the trailer park, where he has a romantic dinner with Tiffany. Charles and Tiffany get turned on by him having just committed murders. They start making out in the background. Slappy takes this opportunity to ruin Tiffany's meatball dinner. He pours the entire salt and the salt shaker into the meatball tray. Then he puts bugs in the mashed potatoes and scrapes dirt from under the refrigerator and places that in the vegetable dish. We then see Slappy sitting at the dinner table with them as they eat. Charles hates it, Tiffany hates it too, and doesn't understand what went wrong. Charles then tells her thanks for ruining his evening. He thrashes her and strangles her, and then leaves to go out drinking. Tiffany runs to bed to cry. Slappy laughs and gets up to leave. Before he does, he peeks in on Tiffany and says, "Geez, you'd think something really terrible happened, like an entire homeless family getting killed right before Christmas." Slappy leaves. Then we get the opening titles. So that's a lot of fan service right there, I know. I won't do that in the sequels, really. That's just something I wanted to do for the first movie because I thought it'd be really cool. Because I don't know if you guys know or not, but Chucky was kind of inspired by Slappy, actually Slappy was inspired by Chucky. So it'd be really fun to see those two characters in the same movie. Caption, 10 years later. Emilio is now 22 years old. He is a gangster, and his men are holding up a bank. The robbery goes well, too well. They enter the vault only to find it's a trap. The door closes and the room fills with poison gas. That's when we find out this is only a story Emilio is writing to pass the time. He is still a gangster, though. Emilio is killing time in the family's safe house. He's instructed by an older gangster to go shop. He gets a grocery list and complains this is all he does for them, as well as other menial tasks. The older gangster warns him not to complain. He goes shopping. When he gets back with the groceries, an informant comes brushing past him like he's a nobody. He informs that same older gangster, that the rivaling gang has planned an attack that evening. The older gangster announces the safe house is going on lockdown. He then asks Emilio to go out and get burgers for the whole crew, saying that they don't have time to make dinner that night. They need to watch the house. Emilio sets the groceries down and leaves to go get fast food. While out getting burgers, Emilio sees a homeless mom and daughter. He buys them burgers and fries too, and also sticks some money in their bag. He tells them Merry Christmas. Later that evening, Emilio sits on a meeting with the boss. The boss is a portly man with an orange round face. His nickname is the Pumpkin King, and that's obviously a Nightmare Before Christmas reference, since this is a Christmas Goosebumps story. He tells everyone to guard their posts and shows them a drawing of the house, with all the spots indicated with dots. Emilio then asks what he's supposed to do. The Pumpkin King tells him to go take a nap after he eats his cookies and milk for dessert. Emilio snaps and stands up to the boss. He says he's tired of not being taken seriously. Then he points out a weak point in their strategy of where to guard. He says there's a way the attackers can get right to the room where the boss wants to hide. The Pumpkin King points to Emilio. He says take him out back and get him taken care of. Then it turns out he's pointing to the man behind him, not him. The heavies take this random gangster out back and kill him for no good reason. The Pumpkin King says, "You're right about the weakness. I have the perfect solution." We see the random gangster's chopped off head on a post, and also his body displayed like a warning to the enemy. Emilio waits in the living room with several other men. They all have Tommy guns and shotguns handy. Someone outside sees something and warns them. Emilio peeks outside and sees a flurry of cars pull up. They sit there for a while, and then one man gets out of the car. He is a tall black man carrying a basket with mysterious contents. He approaches their safe house only to be met with two henchmen. He tells them it's an early Christmas gift from us to you. The henchmen look back at the safe house for hints on what to do. One of them gets a phone call from the boss. He tells them to open it. They open up the basket to find nothing but a detonator. One of the henchmen takes it out and inspects it. Then he pushes the basket back and pulls out his gun. He informs his boss it's a detonator for something. The tall man announces it's to kill himself. He says that he betrayed his gang, so therefore they want to let them have the satisfaction of killing him. He then begs them not to do it. The henchmen smile and ignore their boss and turn off their phones and press the button. Nothing happens. They press it over and over again. The tall man then calls them stupid and announces the button actually triggered one of their own most productive warehouses to explode. He then shoots them both. The men in the cars begin firing out at the safe house to cover for the tall man running back to the car. The men inside the safe house break open the windows and shoot at them. The cars all drive off and the tall man escapes. The boss comes down furious, downstairs. He runs outside and he shoots the corpses of his henchmen and kicks them, calling them idiots, when in fact he's doing something idiotic himself. Then he announces they're going to give a major payback to the gang. They're going to hit the other gang with full force tomorrow, and Emilio is going to get to go along for the ride too. He will go to all the warehouses to assess the damage. The boss will, not Emilio. The next morning, Emilio finishes cooking breakfast for the gang. They joke with him about rules for when he goes along with them for the ride. They head out to a house in the middle of nowhere. Immediately when they show up, bullets start flying. They get out and use the car doors as shields as they kill henchmen outside the house. Then they charge toward the house with Emilio following them. They tell Emilio to pick up a gun and pretend he's a gangster like them. He picks one up only for it to knock him to the ground when he shoots. He reluctantly follows them into the house. They clear out the first floor and move up to the second. Emilio is told to stay downstairs. When he stands around, he notices there's a trap door. He quietly alerts the men upstairs. The rest of the crew are actually hiding down in there. They surprise them and kill them. Emilio runs upstairs to escape the carnage. Emilio sees one door at the end of the hallway that's closed. He opens it with his shotgun raised. He finds an old man dying at his desk. It's the head of that safe house. Presumably. Emilio investigates and finds he drank a liquid with crushed up pills in it. Then he turns and sees Slappy the dummy sitting on a chair in the corner. He gets nostalgic and remembers Slappy. He picks up the dummy and takes it with him. The case is there too. The guys dog on him for taking the dummy with him as a souvenir. One of the older authority figures is on the phone with the boss and asks him what to do. The boss says that he wants them to burn down the house. The men proceed to set the house on fire with all the bodies inside. All the other gangsters' cars are exploded too. Back at the safe house, Emilio plays with his new dummy while in a debriefing. They admit Emilio did okay. So they're kind of lying, because he did terribly. He didn't do shit except for get a dummy. He came there basically to go on a toy run. The Pumpkin King says that's good. Then he asks him why the dummy. Emilio admits it's all he has left of his family. He tells them what happened when he was a kid, and that's when we see Slappy's eyes narrow in on him when he's not looking. Slappy recognizes Emilio and then goes back to playing dead. The Pumpkin King says he hopes Emilio doesn't want to get laid because he ain't getting any with Slappy around anytime soon. Emilio takes Slappy to his room. This is where Slappy confronts him. He immediately gets the physical advantage on Emilio and twists his arm until almost breaking it. Emilio then acknowledges Slappy was the one who caused the trouble for him hours before his parents were killed. Slappy says yes. He then says, wait a minute, what about that card with the words on it? He reaches for Slappy's pockets and Slappy smacks his hand away. He then says, what card? Oh, that old thing? I don't know where that got to. I had to start making my own cards years ago. Only I know the words unless you have it lodged somewhere in your memory in between shitting your diapers and losing your parents. Emilio then asks Slappy what he wants. Slappy says, I want to make a deal. In exchange for my help, you have to be my slave. Your boss isn't the boss anymore. I am. My tea is getting really cold really fast, by the way. Like, I literally just brought it in here and it's already, like, lukewarm. Emilio asks what kind of help he could give Slappy. Slappy says he knows all about the opposing family. Oh, wait, no. He's asking what help Slappy could give. He says he knows all about the opposing family, the Viscusos. He can help them crush them. Emilio agrees to be Slappy's slave. Slappy orders Emilio to shine his shoes. He shines them. That's when one of the few henchmen come in on him doing that. Slappy plays dead. The henchman laughs at him and then leaves. Emilio keeps shining. At dinner, Emilio eats with Slappy at the table with all the gangsters. That's when Slappy starts making jokes. First, he jokes about the food Emilio made. Then he jokes about the different gangsters at the table. They become extremely sensitive and get angry at Emilio, thinking he's saying those things. The boss even has to calm them down. Then he encourages Emilio to take Slappy back to his room. Slappy takes this opportunity to roast the Pumpkin King. He breaks down and tries attacking Emilio. Oh wait, no, not the Pumpkin King. The hothead gangster. The boss breaks up the fight. Then the hothead says the only way to settle this is a duel. Emilio is terrified. Emilio and the hothead set up for a duel out in the courtyard. The backyard, probably. Not the courtyard. Emilio is given a pistol by a friendlier, older gangster who tries teaching him how to use it. Instead of chickening out, he commits to it. Slappy sits in the corner watching. The other men form a crowd behind Emilio. They prepare to duel. That's when all of a sudden, one of the men's guns goes off and shoots the hothead in the stomach. The men are confused about what just happened, looking around to see who did it. Slappy isn't in his chair anymore. He's on the ground. Emilio knows it was him. The boss then instructs Emilio to finish him off. Emilio is told he'll replace that guy. He reluctantly walks up to do his job. The hothead says, "You'll never be one of us." Emilio unloads the entire 6 bullets on him, killing him for good. Back upstairs, Emilio asks Slappy why he's helping him. Slappy admits he owes it to him for not protecting his other potential slaves all those years ago. You know, his parents. Emilio then admits he even went to the police years later to identify Charles Lee Ray. The police wouldn't believe him. They thought he was making it up to get attention. And this is obviously to explain why they don't talk about these characters in regards to his victims, because, Charles Lee Ray has an official victim count, and there's no mention of these characters, and so the reason why is because the police don't believe him. Slappy then tells him he does everything the wrong way. He has to start doing things the way Slappy wants him to do them. He says you don't slit a man's throat while he's awake and is able to fight back. You do it when he's asleep. Emilio asks what he wants him to do in particular. Slappy says they have to attack the other side as a surprise once again. Just the two of them. Then he asks Emilio for some paper to write down something. Slappy creates his own card with the magic words on it. He puts the card away and says, if worse comes to worse, you put me down. If worser comes to worse, I put you down. Then Emilio agrees and goes to sleep. Slappy writes down mysterious things on the extra paper he is given while Emilio sleeps. Next morning, the Viscusos are trafficking girls in their warehouse. They are sending off a new storage container full of them. The warehouse has plenty of men with guns guarding it. That sounded funny. It sounded like I said that the guns were guarding it. I know. That's not what I meant. We see one of them eating breakfast in the control room and listening to the song playing throughout the sequence. He picks up a breakfast sandwich and puts it halfway in his mouth, only to look down and see there's firecrackers about to go off in the sandwich, and he chewed into half of them. He gasps, and before he can spit it out, his face explodes open. That's when Slappy appears in the corner of the room laughing. He says, "You always were a big mouth, Ronald." Then Slappy walks over to Ronald and gets out a Roman candle. He lodges it into Ronald's throat and lights the fuse. Slappy gets to the controls and kills the cameras and lights. The gangsters out there complain. Ronald is choking trying to get the candles out. He collapses to the ground, Slappy watching him. The Roman candle goes off and blows the door open. Slappy sneaks out of the control room, all of the men going up there to check what's going on. This is when Slappy secretly gets Emilio inside the warehouse. They proceed to the container with the girls and open it. They go inside and the girls are scared. Emilio calms them down. One of them comments how a dummy is alive. Slappy says, "Hey, don't call the guy helping you escape a dummy, dummy." That's when the gangsters turn the lights back on and can tell someone has broken in. They go back downstairs to investigate the shipping container. Slappy says, "Uh-oh." He pauses in disbelief for a second. How could a plan of his not fully work? Plan S is in Plan Slappy. Slappy comes out of the storage container, which is surrounded. He has his hand inside his jacket and says, if you shoot me, I'm going to make your feminine merchandise turn into yesterday's garbage." I don't know. That line wasn't very good. They try talking down Slappy because they know him, or knew him. He slowly walks away from them and makes them follow him. Then he runs out to the dock. Emilio sneaks out with the girls and gets them all in his car. He tells them he's driving them to the police station. They can't mention him or Slappy, though, when they talk about what happened. One of the girls asks, "What about Slappy?" Emilio says he's not a dummy. He can find his way home just fine. They all thank Emilio. Back home, Emilio and Slappy are in the billiards room. Emilio plays pool with the guys when a gangster pops in the room and announces to everyone Viscuso's 3rd Street warehouse has been shut down for good. Everyone celebrates. One of them says they should go out to a bar to celebrate, and he'll buy them all drinks. They rush out except for Emilio and Slappy. One of them comes back in and says Emilio can come too, and Slappy. At the gangster club, Emilio drinks a fourth cocktail. He doesn't take it very well. He's totally drunk. Slappy says, you better start putting on the act if you want to impress your friends. You have no charisma, no charm, no confidence. You're like a little balloon animal surrounded by pins. Emilio says, impress them? I got an idea. He grabs Slappy and walks towards the stage. He talks to the guy next to the stage and stands by him. The woman on the stage finishes singing a 1920s type song and leaves to a round of applause. Emilio and Slappy go on stage. The audience can tell Emilio is going to suck, and they start booing him. This gets the attention of his crew and his boss. They all pay attention to him with curiosity. Soon, Emilio gets so nervous he storms off the stage and cuts off Slappy in the middle of his act. He's just not confident enough yet. His crew turns their backs on him in embarrassment. In the back alley, Emilio is arguing with Slappy. His boss walks in on them. He wants to have a talk with Emilio. They walk out onto the sidewalk together with Slappy under Emilio's arm. The boss tells Emilio with replacing that hothead he killed, he's going to have much more responsibility. Starting tomorrow, he's going to have to move to a different house to oversee part of their drug operations. Emilio's only question is, but what about my cooking? The boss says we'll order in from now on. He then leaves Emilio with Slappy to think about his new situation, congratulating him too. Slappy says, Pumpkin Man just did you a favor. There's a mole in that operation, and we're going to get him. Next morning, Emilio and Slappy are headed for the other house. It's also in the middle of Nowheresville. There are just a few houses around, and it's quiet. That means it's even more dangerous than the crowded city. Just as they're about to arrive, they are shot at and the driver is killed. Their car crashes into a tree. Emilio and Slappy get out of the car along with the guy in the front passenger seat. They shoot back. Emilio grabs a rifle out of the trunk. There's two cars hidden away behind bushes with people shooting at them. Emilio tells Slappy to hide. Instead, Slappy crawls in the enemy's direction. Eventually, he gets to them and sees there are 4 people that are shooting. He crawls under the cars and ties their shoelaces together. Then he runs to the right behind a tree and throws a rock or a stick at them. They begin shooting in his direction and chase after him. That's when they trip and fall and actually shoot each other instead. They lie on the ground dying, and Emilio and the other gangster finish them off. Then they confiscate the guns and take their cars too. Emilio is freaked out. At the new house, Emilio sets his things down in the room and sits down to rest. Slappy grabs a piece of printer paper and pen and writes something off camera. He asks Slappy who the mole is. Slappy says he can't remember. Emilio then asks Slappy has to come with him to work all day so he can refresh his memory. Slappy says just one moment. He finishes up the mysterious piece of paper and stuffs it in his inner suit jacket pocket. Emilio and Slappy are in the basement watching them make drugs and package them up. In the evening, Emilio cooks for his new friends. Slappy sits in the corner faking dead. He observes all the different people to find out which one is the mole. Emilio looks to Slappy to see a hint at which one is the bad one. Slappy doesn't say or do anything. At dinner, things are more quiet than usual, and Emilio doesn't have the boss around anymore to defend him. One of the guys asks Slappy why Slappy has to be around all the time. Emilio says he's watching them when Emilio has his back turned. They all laugh at him. Then one of them asks if he can do a comedy act with Slappy. Emilio says he's working on it. That's when Slappy kicks him. The suspense in the scene is palpable. Does Slappy remember who the mole was? Emilio then asks why no one came to their defense on the road. One of the guys says, it's not our jobs to come to the aid of panty wastes like you. Emilio says it actually is, and he is their new boss, so they need to respect him. If he's in trouble, they're all in trouble. That guy scoffs at him and says Mario is turning in his grave, the hothead guy, because a pathetic loser took his place. Slappy kicks Emilio hard. Emilio blurts out, "What?" The guy then leans forward and says, "I said you weren't shit." Slappy, angry, says, "Don't forget Emilio put Mario on the ground, and you're next if you don't stop while you're ahead." The guy then jumps up and reaches for his gun, the others calming him down. Emilio continues eating even though he's terrified. Emilio then gives up and goes upstairs with Slappy. He tells them to enjoy their dinner. In his bedroom, Slappy says he remembers who the mole is. It's not the jackass who argued with Emilio. It's one of the other guys, one of the quiet ones. The one with the purple tie. Emilio asks Slappy if he's sure. Slappy says yes. Emilio and Slappy search the mole's things. They find a burner phone, and Emilio makes a call to the only number on the contact list. The boss of the Viscusos answers. He says, "Hello, Purple, any news?" So I guess his wearing a purple tie is like their way of identifying him. Emilio whispers, "We need to meet. Come to the house at midnight and knock 3 times at the front door." He says, "I'll send Thin Timmy over to do that for me." Emilio is hung up on. He asks Slappy who Thin Timmy is. Slappy says, he's the guy below the boss, in the bedroom too. They hide the burner phone back in his things and leave secretly. Sorry guys, this is taking a lot longer than I expected. What I might have to do is split this up into 2 parts and do the second part tomorrow, which means that I'll have to do 2 videos tomorrow, or maybe I'll record the second part of this later. At midnight, a black car pulls up. Out comes the tall black man from earlier in the film. He is Thin Timmy. He's accompanied by 2 guards. He knocks 3 times at the door. The door creaks open with nothing but black inside. It's creepy as hell. They go inside. Timmy says, "Purple, are you there?" He wanders into the kitchen to see the creepiest image of the movie. The purple-tied guy is sitting mysteriously at the dinner table with nothing but one kitchen light on over his head. He's smiling in such a strange and unnatural way. You can tell something is wrong. Nevertheless, Thin Timmy sits down and shakes his hand. His hand props up in a weird way, like he's being puppeteered. Timmy says, "Well?" Slappy says, "Thank you for coming." He moves the man's mouth while he talks. The Pumpkin King wants to initiate peace talks with Mr. Viscuso. Timmy says there will never be peace for that fat bastard, only a slow and miserable death. The purple man's eyelids move up and down like a doll. Timmy asks him if he's doing okay. Meanwhile, both bodyguards are quietly taken out in the background. Emilio and another guy slit their throats. The purple man's mouth lingers open as if Slappy is enjoying the blood being shed. Then he says, "No, Timmy, actually, I'm not feeling like myself." Then Slappy lets the corpse fall over. We see strings and wires coming out of his back. Slappy laughs his head off and Timmy looks disturbed. He gasps, "Slappy." Then Timmy is caught off guard when he has a hood put over his head and he's tied up. Classic Reservoir Dogs trunk shot with Slappy, Emilio, and the jackass from dinner shoving Timmy in the trunk and closing it. The jackass flips a cigarette. What? He flips a cigarette? The jackass then asks Emilio how he controls Slappy's voice and mouth and movements and everything so perfectly. Slappy says, "It's not the 50s anymore, pal. You don't have to stick your hand up someone's ass to make him to say what you want him to say." The jackass shrugs it off. They get in the car as Thin Timmy screams muffled screams. They start the car and turn on a classic song. Wait. This leads into a POV shot of the trunk in a scary warehouse. The Pumpkin King is there as well as everyone from the other safe house, aka all the main players in the family. They all smile at Timmy as he screams, his hood taken off. Some of the men have cattle prods, chains, saws, hammers, knives. It's pretty dark. We hear Timmy being tortured in a room in the warehouse as the Pumpkin King is talking with Emilio out in the open. He gets the full story from him and the jackass from dinner. They then get the bodyguards' corpses out of the car as well as the Purple Man. The Pumpkin King commends Emilio for his actions. Slappy then cuts in and says, "Our actions." The Pumpkin King laughs. Then the screaming stops, which concerns the Pumpkin King. One of the gangsters, who's got a bloody shirt on, opens the door to the torture room and says he wants to speak to you, boss. The Pumpkin King goes in there. What comes next is nerve-wracking. He asks Emilio to come in there too. We never see Timmy's tortured body in this scene, only hear his voice. The look on Emilio's and Jackass's face are enough to show it, as well as the blood everywhere. It's really gross and morbid. "Say it again," he tells Timmy. Timmy mutters, "Don't trust the dummy. Bad things happen to all of us." The Pumpkin King says, "What do you mean? It's a fucking dummy. You trying to tell me you're more scared of a dirty old ventriloquist dummy than you are of us?" Timmy says, "Yes." The Pumpkin King says, "Jesus, I knew the Viscusos were fruity, but I didn't know you were that fruity." Timmy says he's got a voice box somewhere inside him. Someone out there is using him to infiltrate all of us and kill us off one by one. The boss turns to Emilio. He grabs the dummy from Emilio and says, "If you're going to seriously make me rip open this dummy in front of all these grown men and nothing interesting comes out, then we are going to rip your insides out and see if something more interesting is in there. You got that?" He grabs a switchblade and tears open Slappy's shirt. Nothing but stuffing comes out. But then there's a recording device, a bug. He turns to Emilio along with everyone else. Emilio is tied up in the back of a black car with Slappy and the jackass from dinner. They are driving at high speed. The boss yells, "What the fuck is this? Why is this inside that thing?" Emilio says he doesn't know. The jackass punches him. Emilio says he really doesn't know. The jackass punches him again. He says, "That was from the Purple Man, not Slappy. I guess somehow it got into, I don't know." The jackass punches him again and again. The boss says, "How did he get it in there? Did he do it himself? Better tell us, you dead little shit." They speed up faster. Emilio says he doesn't know. Again. The jackass pulls out his blade and holds it to Emilio's throat. The Pumpkin King says, "Let's pull over and waste this shrimp." That's when Slappy sits up and turns his head 360 degrees. He says, "Who are you calling shrimp? Extra large heart attack?" The Pumpkin King points his gun at Emilio and says, Wait, do you think that's going to help? Slappy says, is that what your wife says when she gives you your 10 pancakes for breakfast every day? The Pumpkin King is in shock. Slappy is alive? Slappy says, what really happened is this schlub right here is trying to frame Emilio. He's mad his old boy has been replaced and wants revenge, no matter how dirty he's doing him. The jackass covers Slappy's mouth, to which Slappy bites him until blood comes out of his hand. Slappy then remarks, if you don't want me to bite, that's 25 extra bucks, mister. The Slappy says he's lying, I didn't do it. Who are you going to believe, me or a dummy? The Pumpkin King moves his gun back and forth. Slappy turns to the jackass with murder in his eyes. He climbs on top of him and beats the hell out of him. Then he rips open his mouth and pukes his green demonic puke down the guy's throat. Everyone freaks out. Emilio tries helping him, but he's tied up and can't. The Pumpkin King can't shoot, so he stops the car finally and gets out and comes to the back. By the time he gets there, it's too late. The jackass's body falls out and his insides rip open. The puke was so acidic it ripped open his stomach and his throat and the inside of his mouth. The Pumpkin King looks at Emilio and then Slappy. And then at Slappy, and Slappy burps. We see them driving away from a garbage bag where presumably that guy's dead body is inside. The Pumpkin King asks how it's possible. Emilio is untied now and he's scared still. Emilio says he doesn't know. Slappy says, I can't tell you or I'd have to kill you. He laughs at the top of his lungs. The Pumpkin King says, we are going to have a long talk about this. Slappy says it's me who's going to do all the talking. Whatever position Emilio is in right now isn't good enough. He's now your right-hand man. The Pumpkin King says, I already have a right-hand man. Slappy says, good, now you have one extra in case you get diabetes and have to amputate. He laughs. Slappy then says, whatever he's being paid, double it, triple it. Whatever perks he's getting, give him more. He needs a new suit. He needs a house, a mansion. Better yet, he deserves your respect and admiration. Oh, and one last thing. I need a new shirt and suit. And the next time you try to come at my insides with a knife, I'm going to pull yours out and help you lose a ton of weight, you pathetic waste of human life. The boss, defeated, says, whatever you say. Slappy says, and the driver. The driver gulps and says, what about the driver? Slappy says, he gave me a dirty look. I want you to shoot him. The Pumpkin King says he's been their driver for over 20 years. He's loyal and a good man, a good family man. That was a revision. I didn't want him to say both of those things. He sends his family pears for Christmas, too. Slappy says pears. And the Viscusas are the fruity ones? The Pumpkin King gets his gun back out. Slappy then says, maybe it was a mistake. You'll get your pears this year for Christmas. The Pumpkin King says, anything else you need? Slappy interrupts and says, boss, I am your new boss, and you are going to be my slave. Pumpkin King says, okay, anything else you need, boss? Slappy says, I'm glad you asked. So, this is a turning point in the movie, obviously. Montage begins. Push It to the Limit starts as a tribute to Scarface. We see Emilio and Slappy at a mansion. It's now his. We then see Emilio and Slappy being fitted into suits. Very stylish. Next we see Emilio and Slappy standing in the lobby of the mansion. They watch a line of VIP prostitutes stand in front of them in bikinis. Emilio picks one, reluctantly. Slappy jumps off of Emilio and picks two of them. We see the prostitute with Emilio. She is confident and he is shy and quiet. She likes that and starts messing with him in bed. Then we see Slappy standing on his own bed, and yelling at the two prostitutes of his. He beats on them and they keep on saying, "You're the greatest ever! You're perfect, Slappy!" And Slappy yells, "I don't believe you. Say it like you mean it." So he's kind of just having fun, like ordering them around and beating on them and just treating them like trash. We then see Emilio and Slappy taking a joyride in an expensive car around the most beautiful landscape scenes in New Jersey, which are few and far between. Next, we see Emilio and Slappy partying at the high-end gangster club. They finally do their comedy routine. Someone in the audience gets offended, and he's taken out back and shot. Finally, we see Slappy and Emilio at home in their golden bedroom. Slappy is busy writing on another piece of paper. This time, he puts it in an envelope and stamps it and writes an address on it. Emilio is oblivious and enjoying some cocaine off a prostitute's ass. We freeze frame on Slappy jumping on the bed to crash their party like a jerk. In montage. Emilio and Slappy are alone in their mansion dining room. Emilio asks Slappy, "There's something that's been bothering me. Did you really see that guy put his bug inside of you? Or did you do it yourself for some reason?" Slappy says, "The truth is, sometimes I do things for the fun of it. And by sometimes, I mean all the time. I just can't help myself." Emilio says, "But you didn't mean to get me killed, did you?" Slappy says, "If I wanted you dead, I would have done it already. We're pals, real pals. Let me ask you something. What do you want in this life most?" Emilio says, "I want a family, and I want to be able to provide for them what my parents weren't able to." At the main safe house, Emilio and Slappy join the boss and his consigliere for a meeting. The consigliere says, "Better late than never, I guess." Emilio apologizes and said they got stuck in traffic. The boss says he doesn't want to anticipate the Viscuso's next move. He wants to make sure they never move again. He assigns Emilio personally to ruin Thin Timmy's funeral. Ruin it as in kill everyone there. Except for, women and children, I guess. Kill all the bad guys and the main boss, kill all them. Their big boss will most likely be there. He then reminds Emilio the most important thing. The police can be bribed, so, do whatever you want, but the enemy can never be bribed. The consigliere argues why they're being put in charge of something that he should be put in charge of. He's not aware of the new change in the power structure. At their mansion, Slappy and Emilio are planning their funeral mission. Slappy says, "A funeral is a party with all the fun sucked out of it. So how does a party like that go from sucky to nightmarish?" Emilio says, "We don't know if it's an open casket funeral. If it is, we definitely want Mr. Viscuso to see his secret lover before he dies." Emilio says he has an idea. At the funeral, we finally see the head of the Viscuso family. He looks heartbroken. He comes in there with his wife and children. They're in a dark room with scones and pastries and cookies and coffee and stuff like that. Slappy is there too. He sneaks around to find the coffin. He finally finds Thin Timmy and gets inside of his body and sits inside his disgusting, rotting torso. And so he props open Timmy's mouth and did I already say that? It sounded like I didn't. He props open Timmy's mouth and crawls inside of his torso. We hear him say, "It smells like something died in here." He laughs. Then he realizes he can't see who's looking in on the body. Before he can do anything, the coffin is carried into a room and set up so people can view him. Meanwhile, outside of the funeral home, Emilio and quite a few men surround it in secret. When people run, they will be mowed down too. Slappy tries listening from the inside of Thin Timmy. Slappy squeezes himself upwards towards his throat. He says, "Ugh, there was a reason you were called Thin Timmy." Someone goes, "What?" We see someone looking at the body with curiosity. They lean in. Slappy says, "Shut up!" This scares the person, and they hurry off. Mr. Viscuso approaches the coffin. Then he turns away and leaves. He can't look at him now. Slappy didn't know he was there anyways. But then, his son comes up to the coffin and peeks inside. He goes, "Wow, neat." Slappy says, "Hey kid, can you get your dad? I'm still alive in here. I need his help to get out." He runs to his dad to get help. Mr. Viscuso picks up his son and approaches the coffin again to try to see what's the matter. When they walk up to the coffin, his son looks all around. Just as he's about to say something, Slappy shoots several shots from inside the torso, killing his son only. Mr. Viscuso is horrified and in shock and falls to the ground with his son crying. He covers his son's wounds and yells to call for help. Everybody screams but still stands there. Slappy crawls out of Timmy's mouth and stands up to gloat about what he did. But instead he's met with the reality that he killed the wrong person. He laughs at Mr. Viscuso. Mr. Viscuso recognizes him and sneers and says, "No, not you again. We got rid of you." "Didn't we?" Slappy jumps off the coffin and raises the gun to Mr. Viscuso's head. Everyone cries out in fear. His wife stands by with their other child and covers their eyes. When Slappy tries to shoot him, the gun is out of ammo. Slappy says, "I'll be back." He then runs outside. Everyone comes to his side to comfort him, Mr. Viscuso, and to mourn his son's death. It's nothing like what they had planned, a complete failure. Outside, Slappy panics and runs to Emilio. Emilio and his men are taken back. Slappy shakes his head and says, "On the bright side, the food was overcooked, so everyone was suffering. On the sour side, I had to play a game of guess who, so the wrong person did the dying." Emilio asks, "Who?" Slappy says, "His little rugrat son." The men are all stunned. Slappy is in the trunk of the car, presumably being taken somewhere to be destroyed. Slappy says, "Knock, knock. Who's there?" Slappy. Slappy who? Slappy who got stabbed in the back for trying to help his favorite slave. At a dump, Emilio and his soldiers get Slappy out of the trunk. Emilio tells Slappy it's garbage day. Slappy then says, "Do you think throwing me away will get rid of me? I figured I was the brains of our operation, but come on." Emilio remembers the piece of paper and takes it out of Slappy's pocket. Excuse me, sorry. He reads the magic words out loud. "Do, re, tia mia, zuwipol." Slappy cries with every word, "No, no, no!" Then he falls asleep. Emilio tosses him into the garbage and rips up the homemade card. Him and his friends leave the dump. Here we have the infamous sad period of the movie. We hear sad music and watch garbage getting dumped on Slappy, including rotting fish. Then it starts snowing. We zoom into Slappy as he's being dumped on. Flies are attracted to them. Then Slappy sits up in the midst of the rotting fish. He looks around with an angry expression. It begins thundering outside, which is a thunder snowstorm, a very rare occurrence. Slappy says, "Thankfully, I wrote down the wrong words, just like at the other joint." Flashback. We see the old man at the Viscuso safe house who originally had Slappy. He gets scared when he hears the dangerous actions outside. Slappy is very cruel to the old man and taunts him about his end. He then advises him to end them both. The old man gets out Slappy's past homemade card and says, "Re Polimanific du Toll." Slappy pretends to fall asleep in the corner. The old man chews up the card and goes to the desk and poisons himself. That's when Slappy yells, "Sucker!" He then laughs at the old man, who sits there in fear. He keeps going, "No, no." Then he chokes violently, and stuff comes out of his mouth. He dies, and Slappy loves to watch him suffer. Then he hears someone coming, so he plays dead. In the dump, Slappy is fumbling around with things. He finds toys that have been ripped up and misused and thrown away. Sorry, I don't know what happened to my voice there. I sound like a weirdo. Next he says, Slappy always makes sure to have a contingency plan. That means when something bad happens, I always make sure to have something worse up my sleeve. He pulls the envelopes out of his suit jacket, the ones he's been writing the whole movie. Then he puts them back in. Finally, he starts doing magic with the discarded toys. He laughs watching them come to life. Time to make more slaves. More loyal slaves, that is, he declares. At the mansion, Emilio is meeting with the Pumpkin King in his office. The boss says they didn't just do a rotten thing, they did a stupid rotten thing, and someone has to pay. If it isn't going to be Emilio, it has to be someone else. He then says it would be a great idea to stick them with Slappy again, since he's the one who did it, and the Viscusos are familiar with him. Emilio admits he got rid of Slappy and deactivated him. The Pumpkin King says they will have to figure out a different Patsy. He then says, "We'll just find a quiet guy and say he did everything. If anyone questions it, we'll just call them conspiracy theorists. You know, the usual." He then tells Emilio he wants him to lay low in his mansion. They need to deal with this problem respectfully before they get back to war. Instead of lying low, Emilio decides to throw a Christmas party at his mansion. There's people hooking up, doing drugs, dancing, causing a mess, drinking eggnog, and playing Christmassy games. Emilio finds himself unable to be confident now that Slappy is gone. He blends into the party like a wallflower instead of being the head of it. Suddenly, we see a woman going to get some eggnog. She sees a literal turd in the eggnog bowl and screams. Everyone comes to see what's wrong, including Emilio. Emilio thinks one of the guests did it and he throws it outside. He then has to go make more in a new bowl. Meanwhile, Slappy enters the party and looks around on where to cause trouble first. He sees a sexy girl standing under the mistletoe. He climbs on a bookshelf and jumps on her to kiss her. She screams and tries getting him off, only for him to keep kissing her. Then he climbs off of her and runs away. Emilio rushes back in with the new eggnog, wondering what happened. The woman claims a kid is at the party and assaulted her. Emilio starts searching around for the kid. Slappy is upstairs finding a room to hide in. He goes into one only to be met with a couple making out. He turns them both into dummies. Then he opens up the window and signals outside. We see an army of disfigured toys and rotten fish come towards the house at night. There's snow everywhere, making it look like a wintry Night of the Living Dead. In another bedroom, the couple gets in the bed naked only to discover underneath their entire blanket is rotten fish too. The bed is covered in it and they're on top of it. They scream. Downstairs, a fat guy is trying to get more cookies off the table, and that's when he gets a mouse trap snapped onto his hand. He cries out and falls down like he thinks he's dying. The people dancing are met with disfigured toys. They all stand there frozen. The toys start dancing along with them. They start to calm down even though they are very confused. Upstairs, Emilio is still searching for the kid. The fish couple runs out past Emilio. He goes into their room to search. Downstairs, there's a guy trying to impress a girl, and they go to the couch to sit down. That's when the music stops playing just as he sits down on a whoopee cushion underneath the couch pillow. The girl cringes and moves away from him, and everyone around looks at him. In the bedroom upstairs, Slappy looks up the dummy girl's dress. He says, nice mahogany. Then he has to hide from Emilio. Emilio thinks the room is normal and leaves. That's when Slappy goes back out into the hallway. Downstairs, the toys mingle in with the party and grab weapons. Some of them also go outside and lock the front and back doors. Slappy follows Emilio to the staircase and says, "Hey, Emilio, I found the kid." Emilio turns around and is scared so much he falls down the stairs. Everyone screams, and suddenly the party stops. Slappy then laughs and starts his monologue. He says, "Hello, everybody. You may not know who I am, but I promise you're going to remember me for the rest of your lives. I'm Slappy." People start panicking and trying to escape. Slappy immediately turns some into dummies. He informs everyone he has little helpers, like Santa Claus does, to keep them in line. They will kill them if they need to. Slappy then announces everyone there will be his new slaves. They will do anything and everything he wants. He tells them to start playing kissing games or something entertaining like that. That's when Emilio wakes up. He's disheveled. He tries talking down Slappy. Slappy immediately threatens him and has an old jack-in-the-box hold a knife to his throat. He says that when they're done cutting him up into pieces, they won't forget to sort out the garbage when they throw him away. Emilio cools down. Next, an audience member asks Slappy what he wants. Slappy says he wants to make them his perfect slaves and throw a really good Christmas party. Better than the lame one that Emilio threw. He tells them to dance for him. Then he gets a box of Christmas ornaments and throws them at the people's feet as they dance. The next day, Slappy is still keeping the party hostage. Now everyone is in line at the staircase giving Slappy a compliment contest. Later on that day, they were playing charades. One of the people turned into dummies tries doing some kind of impression. It's really bad since they're a dummy. Slappy and everyone else guesses. None of them got it right. The answer was Slappy himself. Slappy yells at them and says they insulted him. He then tells his slaves to put the dummy people in the fireplace or the oven. The dump toys carry the dummies out of there. Emilio tries to go intervene. Then someone asks to go to the bathroom. Slappy says, "Go on yourself like all the others." The next day, Slappy and the dump toys are watching guests perform comedy routines. Slappy is offended by how bad their jokes are. One of the guests says eventually people will notice they're gone, or they will starve to death. Might as well let them go. Slappy just lets that guy go. When he gets into his car, it explodes. The next day, someone faints. People crowd over her to help her. Slappy jokes about how it was her who was the one who came to a gangster's mansion for a party. Others complain about not having anything to eat or drink. Slappy retrieves the dead fish minions and puts them back to sleep. Then he hands one to each guest, including Emilio. He jokes about how he gave them fish when they were hungry, and they won't even eat it. Some of them actually do eat the rotten fish. Later on that night, the woman who fainted wakes up to Slappy. He shoves a rotting fish in her mouth and tells her he was really worried about her. Suddenly, a few guests try to make another escape. The toy minions catch them, and Slappy instructs them to hang them from the ceiling. Then he encourages the guests to play piñata with the escapees. If they comply, he'll give them some food and drinks from Emilio's upstairs stash. They proceed to beat the escapees to death while Slappy watches. Emilio says enough. He then begs Slappy to let them all go, and he'll do whatever he wants. Slappy then says if they'll do whatever he wants, they'll sit there and enjoy themselves until he says otherwise. He then goes on a tirade towards Emilio. He informs him how he was created to do evil and only evil, how it's very silly to ask someone like that for mercy. Emilio says he didn't know. Slappy says the world doesn't know, and that's why it is all mine to terrorize. That's when someone comes up behind him and stabs him with the fire poker. He gasps. The hostages gasp. Slappy turns around and takes out the poker. He then beats it against his hand, marching toward him. The man becomes scared and emotional. Slappy asks his minions to hold him down. The hostages rush to see what he does. Slappy feels the sharp point with his fingers. Then he looks down at the man and aims the poker at him. He raises it up with the guests pleading with him to stop. Slappy then hints the poker is going up his rear end. The fire poker he lowers viciously and stops right against his skin. The guests and him scream. He then takes the poker and goes back to the lobby. Next morning, even Slappy looks a little bit bored. He says maybe he should call off his plan and think of something even worse to do. He gets up and walks to the front window, where he sees the Pumpkin King's black car come into the driveway. He smiles a devilish smile. He then turns to everyone and says, "You're all free to go." The guests are relieved. They run away and go outside to their cars in a hurry. Slappy then says, "Except you, Emilio." When everyone is gone, Slappy keeps an eye on the window. Emilio sees the car outside and asks Slappy what he's done. Slappy says, "You see, my intention was to wait out the Federal Postal Service." Slappy and his minions then crowd Emilio to make sure he doesn't escape. When the Pumpkin King and his men bust open the front door, they see the scene in a different light, like Emilio is conspiring with Slappy and his minions, and he never destroyed him after all. The Pumpkin King then says, "Well, Merry fucking Christmas." They take Emilio away. Just when Slappy thinks he's escaping, too, they shoot and kill all of Slappy's minions, and take Slappy too. Slappy and Emilio are once again in the back of the Pumpkin King's car. Emilio asks, "What now? What has he done?" The Pumpkin King reads, "Dear sweetie, I long to touch you again. I long to kiss your beautiful little lips and rub against your tiny body, for you're the most perfect woman a man could ask for. Even though our love is forbidden, it will not keep me away from you. Love, Emilio." Emilio asks what this about. The Pumpkin King tells him. We see a flashback. We see the Pumpkin King walking in on his 8-year-old daughter's bedroom to see her reading the letter she got in the mail. The mom is sitting there with her, disturbed by them, and grabbing them away. Emilio says he never did it, he didn't do anything like that, Slappy did it. The Pumpkin King tells them to shut up Emilio. They gag him. The Pumpkin King reads another note. Our meetings have been intense. I hope I didn't leave a love mark where someone will see. I am taking a big risk, but it is worth the reward to me. Love, Emilio. P.S. I left something of mine in the letter so that when you smell it, you'll think of me. The Pumpkin King grips onto a cufflink. One of the henchmen checks Emilio's sleeves. He is missing a cufflink. Emilio looks terrified like a little boy again. Slappy looks at Emilio and realizes maybe this wasn't a good idea. Some part of Slappy is actually feeling horrified at what is going on to Emilio. Emilio sees that Slappy realizes it, making him even more scared. He starts crying. The Pumpkin King says, I sent my little girl away to a nut house. She is denying any of it ever happened. Who knows if she'll ever return to society again? Slappy says, no, it was my fault. I did it all. I promise you Emilio would never do that. The Pumpkin King says, I've been looking forward to this for a long time. Men, shut up, Slappy. No, kick him to the curb. They stop the car abruptly and kick out Slappy. He tries to look back at Emilio in the car. They put a hood over Emilio's head, and Emilio screams a horrifying scream as they speed off. Slappy runs onto the road where he watches the car disappear into the background in a tragic ending. Then another car speeds along the country road and runs over Slappy, crushing his wooden head open. We see a white worm crawl out of the dummy's head. Slappy the worm says, oh shit. This is the point where the picture turns into an old school Goosebumps cover. The end. During the end credits, we see Slappy the worm dragging his broken dummy alongside the side of the road. He forgot which spell he needs to use to put himself back together as he's avoiding cars and birds and things trying to harm his dummy body. Finally, he gets the right one. The last shot we see is his wooden hand sticking out his thumb to hitchhike. A car comes into view, and maybe it will stop to pick up Slappy the dummy. Now, that is the end of my first pitch. Surprisingly, I was able to do it, and I'm not going to have to make part 2 tomorrow. And so for the second movie would be called Return of the Living Dummy. In this sequel, we first see a quick run-through of Night of the Living Dummy 1. The movie starts with Slappy telling the twin girls they're going to be his slaves now. He orders them to clean his suit in the laundry room. Then he looks out their bedroom window and sees Mr. Wood's dummy body isn't there anymore. This is a tribute to Halloween 1978, when Michael's body isn't on the ground anymore. The movie as a whole is an epic back and forth between Slappy and Mr. Wood, like Batman and the Joker in The Dark Knight. It resolves not just the first Night of the Living Dummy book, but also the second and the third, with their cliffhanger endings being concluded. By the end, Slappy reigns supreme and kills every single one of his enemies, and succeeds. The final movie in the trilogy would be called Slappy's Rivals. This is a reference to in Bride of the Living Dummy, when we see Slappy has destroyed every one of his enemies and torn their limbs apart in that warehouse. And Jimmy O. James says these are all Slappy's rivals. This one is about Slappy going to a ventriloquist school to terrorize the kids. He finds that the son of the Pumpkin King is at this school and decides to make it his mission to make his life a living hell to get revenge for Emilio. He then has to decide if he really wants to do something so evil to someone so innocent when really it's his father who he should go after. So that would be the third one. So anyways, that's about all I got. It's not perfect at all, but basically I just wanted to put all of my ideas in a list and see what you guys think. So anyways, please like this video, comment, and tell me what you thought. I'm exhausted now. And then please subscribe to our channel if you'd like to see more videos like this. I probably won't do any more extended pitch videos like this for the Goosebumps pitches. I'll probably just do like shorter pitch videos like I did before. But I wanted to do something special since I didn't do any slasher verse pitches this year. And I also made a cover that I wanted to show you guys. So this cover, trying to find it. There we go. So this cover, it's kind of a tribute to Scarface a little bit, where you see Slappy on the couch at this party, and he's got a present, which is obviously a gun, and he's got like a Freddy Krueger sweater, and like, yeah. So I came up with that cover just for fun. Yeah, originally I wanted to have Slappy sitting in the back seat of a car with like gangsters with guns on both sides of him, but I wasn't able to draw that, so I decided to draw this instead. So anyways, yeah, goodbye everybody, see you soon.